Hey guys, we're Group I Don't Know. I'm Stefano.
I'm Austin.
I'm Jackie.
I'm Ryan.
Today we'll be presenting the case of Knight versus Jewett. In this case, it is a touch football game that went wrong. In the court case, they explain exactly what went wrong, and we'll be showing you that in the video. In the video, I'll be playing the narrator.
I'll be playing the plaintiff, Kendra Knight.
I'm the defendant, Michael Jewett.
I'm Andrew Stark, the eyewitness of the plaintiff.
The court case was held in the Supreme Court of California. Once upon a time, in 1987, at a Super Bowl party, a touch football game broke out.
If you keep doing that, I'm gonna have to stop playing.
In this scene that we just presented, the plaintiff told the defendant that if he continued to play as such, she would have to stop playing because he was being too rough. She also believed that once she told the defendant this, that he understood that. On the other hand, the defendant did not recall the plaintiff telling him that she would have to stop playing if he was being too rough.
Oh, my pinky!
In the scene that was just shown, it is the defendant's side of the story. The defendant, Michael Jewett, believed that the quarterback tossed the ball, he went up for an interception, and upon his landing, he took a step back to keep his balance. When he did so, he stepped on the plaintiff's finger and accidentally hurt her. It was not purposely done, and even though the plaintiff does not recall having the same story, this is what the defendant said happened.
Ow, my pinky is broke. Ow, my ankle.
In this scene, you see the plaintiff's side of the story. The plaintiff, who is Kendra Knight, says that she was pushed by the back by the defendant, Michael, and when she fell, he stepped on her finger as he ran past her to catch up to her teammate, who was Miss Starr. Miss Starr is also a witness of the defendant's physical play, where she was pushed and injured her ankle in the scene.
Here is an overview of the Knight versus Jewett case. To start off, he was being too rough for her, and she told him that he needed to stop or else she was going to stop playing, and he didn't listen.
And because he didn't listen, she ended up breaking her pinky, and she needed 3 surgeries, and all the surgeries did not help at all, so she ended up getting her finger amputated, and because of this, she took him to court for battery, assault, and negligence.
In this court case, the judge spoke about 2 assumptions of risk.
The primary assumption of risk was where the defendant owes no duty to protect the plaintiff from a particular risk of harm. The plaintiff who has suffered from such harm is not entitled to recover from the defendant, whether the plaintiff conduct and undertaken the activity was reasonable or not.
The secondary assumption of risk involves instances in which the defendant has breached the duty of care owed to the plaintiff. The defendant is not entitled to be entirely relieved of liability for the injury caused by the breach.
Assumption of risk doctrine states that the risk must be inherent to the sport. The participants must have voluntary consent. Voluntary consent states that everybody knows what's going on and knows the rules of the game. Then it states that the exposure of that risk and the participant must know, understand, and appreciate the inherent risk of the activity. So, for example, for inherent risk of the activity, like if you're playing tackle football, you have to understand that you could break your leg or get a concussion or anything physical of that activity would count as an inherent risk.
Defendants have a duty not to increase inherent risks because they should follow the basic rules just as everyone else does to make sure everybody stays safe. So, for instance, during a touch football game, you can't just start tackling people.
The court found the defendant's actions to be reckless because the defendant could have been more careful during the game and tried to keep his competitiveness down, so the risk would not increase. And the courts said that he went outside the range of the ordinary activity involved in the sport.
The court found that the plaintiff did not assume the risk of playing the sport at first. Obviously, the plaintiff, Kendra, did not understand that touch football will have a bit of contact because in the end it's still a game of football where it's a full contact sport. Even in case of touch football, some people might get out of hand and the touch might be a little stronger than other people's touch. However, she did become aware after the first time she was pushed and did not agree with the action, so that's why she made it clear to the defendant. After both sides said their arguments, the judge came to a decision that the defendant won the case. The judge said that he was at most careless or negligent and didn't have the intent of hurting anyone. In a touch football game, things happen. It's a sport like all the others. And the court ruled that it was not intent to injure. The defendant did not show any reason to want to hurt the plaintiff or any actions that looked threatening for the plaintiff. It was a sport. He showed his competitive side and showed that it got out of hand, yes, and the plaintiff should have just backed away when she saw it was too rough for her. The court decided on the defendant's side because of this, and even if the plaintiff doesn't agree, it is the best possible decision that could have been made in this case, since it is at most negligence and is not intent to hurt. After reading this court case and understanding all the facts, how do you guys think it went?
I personally think that it shouldn't have been a case to sue about because it's a game of football, one, and two, I mean, you're up in your yard playing with your friends, and then all of a sudden, just because you end up getting hurt, you can just sue your friends. Like, I don't think that's right.
I also agree with the court's ruling because the plaintiff knew what they were getting themselves into, and they knew that football can be rough at times and you can potentially be injured.
I also don't agree with this because, I mean, it's a sport. Any sport has inherent risk, and for this case, it was getting hurt, of course. And when you get hurt, you can't always blame somebody else. You have to take the blame for yourself because obviously you agreed to play the sport. And even though it was touch football, things happen. People fall, people break things, but you can't always blame somebody. And for her to try to take that to court because she ended up getting hurt more severely than she ever would have thought is not the right thing to do. I mean, you can only control so much that happens in a game, and if something happens that you didn't want to happen, you can't always put the blame on somebody else.
I agree with my colleagues where this should not have been a lawsuit. Playing a sport is more risky than doing anything else, but anything we do has risk. She could have lost her finger by dropping a knife on it and wouldn't have had anyone to blame, except this time the defendant accidentally stepped on it. In any sport, something can happen. Some people are more competitive than others, and that competitive side will come out, causing them to play a little more rough than others, but it's not the fault of the people getting injured, because if you find it too rough or if you don't like the way they're playing, it's your job to decide, well, I'm not going to play anymore because I'm too scared of what's going to happen, or I know it's too rough for me. You can't ask someone to stop being them because you don't like how they are. The plaintiff had no case in this. She may have had an injury, she may have had to lose her finger, but she can't put that on the defendant where it was a sport, anything can happen. It's out of their control of how other people will play. You can only control what you do and how you act. So if she didn't like it, it was her job to back away and say, this is enough. So the court made the right decision that the defendant should win. If you were in the case of the defendant, how would you have responded to the incident?
Well, being that it was a party and it was a Super Bowl party and they just decided to play touch football all of a sudden, I'm assuming that they know each other, they might be friends. So even if they're not friends, I'm a friendly person. I would make sure that she's okay. And if it was really serious enough, I would probably help her pay for her medical bill or something. But if we're not cool and we're not friends and she just starts being all crazy like that, then I'm probably not going to help her pay because you saw what she did and that was, I think, out of line.
I agree with you where in the case that, especially in the U.S., medical bills are expensive, I would try to help out any way I could and make sure she's okay and help her while she's in recuperation and making whatever she needed. But like you said, taking the defendant to court for an action that was an accident is going too far, and it's pushing the boundaries of a friendship. That's cause for ending the friendship and the defendant not helping her at all.
And to build off of that, they should have come to some sort of settlement. So, like, pay off maybe some of the medical bills so you don't have to go through the court and all that time and effort. And it takes a lot of money to go to court. So you want to make sure you have a settlement before that so you don't waste all
Yeah, I agree. I think it's kind of a little bit ridiculous that you're gonna take your friend to court and they could just help you out. Like, I don't know. It's kind of breathtaking, like speechless, that you could even do that to one of your friends. So.
All right, guys, we're Group I Don't Know, and that was our court case.